Now that everyone's gotten off their opinions and the urge to procrastinate has finally subsided, there's no better time than now, as in when I'm currently writing this script, for me to review Spider-Man No Way Home. The movie's been out for just over a month, but has already broken box office records worldwide, and apart from a few odd man outs, has received high praise from both critics and audiences. I didn't get a chance to see the movie until about 2 weeks after it came out, so going in, I was well aware of how people felt about it. Now the question is, do I think it's that good? The short answer is no, but allow me to explain. As always, I'll start off by going through my positives and negatives, then end things off with my final thoughts on the film. But first, let's go through the general plot of Spider-Man No Way Home. The movie picks up right where Spider-Man Far From Home left off, with a dying Mysterio revealing to the whole world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. The revelation of his secret identity, coupled with the false narrative being spread by the Daily Bugle that he's a killer, makes Spider-Man into a hated public figure. Once the situation starts to seriously affect the lives of his friends and family, Peter decides to ask Doctor Strange to cast a spell that would make everyone forget that he's Spider-Man. As the plot requires, things go wrong, and the multiverse gets broken open, allowing forces from other realities to enter MCU Peter Parker's universe. First, I'll do the positives. My first positive for Spider-Man No Way Home is the great acting and characters. I think the acting in Spider-Man No Way Home ranged from good enough to really great. I can see the argument being made that Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman was bad, but to be fair, he wasn't given much of anything to work with and was barely in the movie. I thought Jamie Foxx as Electro was good. He got a well-needed upgrade to his design and overall attitude, which made him a better character here than in his previous appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. As far as great characters, I'd have to point to Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, Zendaya as MJ, and Tobey Maguire as the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Doc Ock's one of my favorite live-action Spider-Man villains, so it felt great seeing him come back and interacting with all the old and new characters. The de-aging special effects look seamless, and Alfred's just as great in the role here as he was almost 20 years ago. Zendaya's MJ finally got a well-needed boost in personality. I like how they explained this, as her relationship with Peter is making her more expressive. It doesn't make her last two appearances any more enjoyable, but it was a nice touch. I think they're finally moving in the right direction with her character. Tobey Maguire is the biggest reason why most people were excited to see No Way Home, and I'm glad that the creators were able to deliver with the character. In the movie, he's given a still resourceful veteran role, and I think it fits him. While he is important, they don't do that much with the character, but surprisingly, that's enough. Just seeing him on screen with Molina and Defoe at the same time felt great. I liked his interactions with all the characters. I thought he was well respected, and that this was overall a great continuation of his character from Spider-Man 3. Like I said, everyone did a good job, but the standout performances in the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, in my opinion, were Andrew Garfield as the Amazing Spider-Man, Tom Holland as MCU Spider-Man, and Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. If there's one thing that you'll hear pretty much everyone praising about this movie, it's Andrew Garfield's performance, and rightfully so, because it is that good. The charisma that we got to see flashes of in the Amazing Spider-Man movies is on full display here. Those movies had a bunch of problems, but one of them certainly wasn't Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I don't think he's as good of a Peter Parker as Tobey or Tom, but his Spider-Man is definitely the best that we've gotten so far in live action. Speaking of Tom Holland, his Spider-Man, just like Jamie Foxx's Electro and Zendaya's MJ, got a nice upgrade. The writers are finally making the wise decision of moving him into becoming Spider-Man instead of making him Iron Boy once again. It's been a problem for myself and others ever since Homecoming, and I'm glad that they're finally addressing it. Tom's acting ability has never come into question, only his characterization. So making moves like this makes him a much better Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He does a swell job in both the action and emotional moments, and for the first time ever, I'm actually interested to see what they're going to do next with his Spider-Man. As great as all of these performances are, without a doubt the best one in Spider-Man No Way Home is Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. With just some slight help from the aging, he proves that he's just as perfectly cast now as he was back in 2002. Watching him switch seamlessly between the scared and confused Norman Osborn and the ruthless maniac Green Goblin are arguably the best scenes in the whole movie. He was clearly having a lot of fun playing the unhinged character again, and it felt great seeing him finally give Tom Holland's Spider-Man the proper conflict that he's needed ever since Homecoming. My second and last positive is other stuff. These are basically other things that I liked about the movie that I don't have a lot to say on. As expected, the special effects look great all around. The fight scenes are great, and the story, although not at all original, works well enough for what they're trying to do. Since those are all of my positives, let's head into the negatives. My first problem with Spider-Man No Way Home is that it takes a while to get going. A term that I never thought I'd have to use on a movie like this is hard to sit through, but surprisingly, that's how I felt for about the first 15 minutes in No Way Home. That's not to say that this portion of the film was bad. I just think that they should have sped up the events because the slow pacing of that area made it tedious for me to get through it. My second problem with Spider-Man No Way Home is its moments of bad dialogue. The script as a whole is fine in my opinion, but I was so surprised at the low quality of the following bits of dialogue that they affected my overall thoughts of the film. Going in order with the film sequence, first there was the Scooby-Doo joke. That exchange between Doctor Strange and MJ felt just as forcefully awkward and cringe in the movie as it did in the trailer, and I'm still baffled as to why anyone thought it was a good idea in the first place. And second, there was the unnecessary and frankly undeserved use of Uncle Ben's classic proverb, "With great power comes great responsibility." Of course, the line itself isn't bad, it's just how the writers chose to use it in the film. No offense to Marisa Tomei's Aunt May, but out of all the parental figures in the Spider-Man films, she's by far the least deserving to say that line. I understand that she's the only close relative that Peter has in the MCU films, but that doesn't cover up for the fact that she was barely in them. Let's be honest, the character was only there because she had to be. That's how she was treated. The writers never tried to make her more than Peter's hot aunt, so them suddenly caring enough to give her this huge emotional death and Uncle Ben's iconic line felt like a cheap and lazy attempt to play with our emotions. I'm not saying that I felt absolutely nothing when Aunt May died, the scene is well acted, but I certainly didn't feel anywhere near as strongly about it as the writers clearly wanted me to, since they failed to give her character any emotional weight leading up to it. I honestly would have cared more if they had killed Happy instead. My third problem with Spider-Man No Way Home was Peter Parker's dumb decision to try and rehabilitate the villains. Not only did this make the movie predictable, it also made it a bit frustrating to get through, knowing just how pointless the whole thing was. Anyone could see from a mile away that the plan was going to backfire and that Aunt May was going to die. It actually made me feel less sad when it finally came to that part because of how easily avoidable it was, and because Aunt May herself was the main person egging Peter on to try and help them. This is the second time that a well-meant but ultimately stupid decision has really affected my enjoyment of a Spider-Man film. The last time was in the previous movie, Spider-Man Far From Home, when Peter gave the Mysterio Tony Stark's glasses. I get that the MCU's Peter is still fairly new to being Spider-Man, but this level of naivety is unbelievable even for him. I don't know why the writers couldn't find a better way to keep the villains around longer that didn't involve making Peter look stupid and gullible again, but here we are. My fourth, final, and biggest problem with Spider-Man No Way Home is that the story feels too calculated. This one's not that easy to explain, but I'll try my best. Basically, I think that the way how the story played out felt too set up. I understand that with this many characters coming together from 3 different universes, it must be hard to come up with a plot that isn't cliche. But this goes beyond just being another predictable superhero movie, because in my opinion, Spider-Man No Way Home feels like a studio film. It's as if the whole creative team just got into a room together and thought about all of the right things to put in the film, but didn't bother to put as much effort into everything surrounding those things. While watching Spider-Man No Way Home, I couldn't help but feel disconnected from the plot, even though I was generally enjoying what I was seeing. Essentially, what my problem is that I think the creators focused too much on the things that they knew the fans wanted to see and didn't put enough effort into making the movie as a whole more than just good enough. Since those are all of my points, let's head into the final consensus. Despite my negatives outnumbering my positives, I still think that Spider-Man No Way Home is an overall good film. Sure, it's slow to start, some of the dialogue is surprisingly bad, even by current-day MCU standards, and I think that the writers failed to make the overall experience more than just good enough, but in the end, I think that the movie pulled through thanks to its talented cast and because of the strides that they made in improving Tom Holland's Peter Parker, which gives me some hope for the future of the character. Altogether, I give Spider-Man No Way Home a 7.5 out of 10. Certainly not bad, but also not as good as most people make it out to be. And that brings us to the end of the video. Do you agree with my stance on the film, or do I need my head checked? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to know when I upload next. This has been Andre Darius, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.